All right. Awesome. Awesome. Welcome everybody to the live stream that we have just started here at Lift a Voice Live Entertainment. I have some amazing things that we're going to be sharing today, me and my guest, my phenomenal guest. So just to make sure if you guys can hear anything, if you can hear me, make sure you type. Just go ahead and put it in the chat in the comment section. Let us know. Say, I can hear you. That way I know you guys are tuning in from wherever you're tuning in from. And can you hear me okay, Ron?
I can hear you great.
Awesome, awesome, great. So we are going to get started here. And for those of our viewers that are just coming in, today we have an amazing topic already scheduled, right? So we are going to be talking about a very important topic. And I do believe that you guys are going to take a lot of values. There's going to be a lot of insights you're going to be taking from what it is we have to share with all of y'all today. So stay tuned and communicate with us and then be a part of the conversation as it makes it better when we all can communicate and share our own thoughts, right? And so today, like I said, our guest that we have here today, he's going to be sharing a lot of great insight. I just want to go ahead and do a quick introduction about him because I know you guys will be very intrigued by all his accomplishments, and just like I was. Um, so our guest today is a self mastery coach. Now, I call him a soul teacher, right? And he's an author. Also a healer, a speaker, but most importantly, most importantly, he loves connecting with people and just making a difference in general, through whether it be self empowerment, empowerment of other people, and then just bringing about transformation to people in their lives, right? And so I can say anything else, but just to say welcome, Ron. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It is always a joy to get to connect to new people and to get to know, but also offer whatever I've been learning that might help you and whatever
Hmm.
you've been learning that might help me. And this way we create such a beautiful synergy. And so, yeah, it's great to be here.
That's wonderful. I think they always say, the teacher usually learns the most, right? When you're teaching something. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm sure we are going to be learning a lot today from each other. So our topic today is, if you haven't seen on the screen here, it's really focusing on how to nurture the adult self, right? A lot of time we spend a lot of our lives nurturing relationships outside of ourselves. But I think some of the most important relationship we can nurture is our own selves, our own relationship with ourselves. So it's a very much important topic. Something very interesting that I would like to share about our guest today. Now, I think he's the perfect person to really talk about this, topic about nurturing the adult self. Not only because he has a huge background in this topic as far as being a coach, and over the past 20 plus years, he's been able to help, a lot of people be able to connect to themselves, right? And nurture themselves. But also, the fact that once in his lifetime, he was also at a crossroad in his life where he felt confused, he felt somewhat disconnected to himself, and insecurity, right? He had that also. He had that to cross over. Um, and just how he went from there to now being able to nurture an intimate relationship with himself. So I can't wait for us to really get into this topic with you. um it's going to be exciting. So I like to kind of go back to the genesis of your journey, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of like the young person, like the young Ron, and
Mhm.
the family dynamic that you were growing up in. Were there any type of core challenges that you had faced when it came to building that nurture self?
There was a long list of challenges to face, as most people can typically relate. So, one of the primary challenges that I had was growing up with a father who lived in the same house with us for the first 13 years of my life
Hmm.
and never said a single thing to me in those 13 years. never engaged me in one conversation the entire time. Now,
Wow.
sure, he would say, "Go mow the grass," or whatever other orders that he threw out,
Right.
but there was no sense of seeing me as a person. And
Mm.
so that left me with a huge sense of self-doubt and insecurity and confusion.
Mhm.
And then because my parents didn't know how to create a shared, authentic, intimate sharing with each other,
Mhm.
they had tons of dysfunction and eventually got divorced. And then my mother escaped her pain in drinking. And so there was a whole series of things to have to negotiate. And I grew up in North Carolina,
Mhm.
and no one really talked about anything. No one talked
Mm.
about challenges. No one talked about getting help. No one really shared the wounded side of their lives, the
Mhm.
challenged side of their lives, and then put on a mask. And the favorite answer is, "How are you?" "Fine, good,
Mhm.
wonderful." And there was no sense of dealing with anything. And so everybody was building up all of this
Mhm.
wounded anxiety and charged feelings and not knowing how to process or resolve any of it. And so as a
Mhm.
child, this drove me crazy. I was somehow aware of how out of balance this was, and I always had this nagging feeling so much more is possible. And so
Mhm.
I kind of went on this journey to discover as many answers, as many resolutions, first identifying what had been missing and then looking for answers that would make sense to me. And
Mhm.
so I had a first career prior to the one that I do as the head of a school of self mastery.
Right.
I was a performer before I did
Mm.
all of this, and I was one of the very fortunate ones and did over 60 leading roles in, opera and Broadway all over the world, and it gave me a
Mhm.
chance to seek out all kinds of teachers and to find out different approaches to personal healing and transformation. And I took all of the clues from so many different teachers and
Mhm.
created my own approach to personal transformation that
Mm.
I can say not only made a huge difference in my life, but I've had the chance to work with thousands of people from all over the world now. And it is so consistently helpful and clarifying, and people tend to blossom into more and more of their most authentic self
Mm.
versus where I started, where nobody was safe to share their most authentic self. And so it's been a beautiful encouragement
Mhm.
to find these answers and this approach.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be happier that whatever the initial setup needed to be to get me to focus on this
Yeah.
ended up creating that beautiful journey.
Which is beautiful, sometimes our lives change, in an instant without not even knowing that everything we're doing is the preparation to get us to where we actually need to be.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I
that's
believe that
beautiful.
deeply. Yes.
Yeah. So did you like knowing that you growing up in a family in that dynamic where your family and were not really they were very surface on the surface level, right? They were not really intimate and all those things. And then that in return makes you feel like you were unseen, right? I always use the term that sometimes when you're being raised by busy parents or parents that are not like in the present, it's always like you're seen but you're not heard, right? And
Mm.
sometimes you're not even seen at all. So did you always feel less value growing up, like unvalued by your family?
Well, my family did the best they knew how, which I find is often the case with the people I'm working with.
Mm,
They just didn't know. So if I said to you, Faith, at the moment,
yeah.
I need to build a jet engine. Teach me. Go. I'm
Mm,
waiting. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. It's like,
I don't know.
I have no idea
I've
how to
never
help you
done
with it.
it. Yeah.
And so I look at it like that now that I'm an
Mhm.
adult and not the child who is just going, why are we not connected? Why are we not sharing? Why is
Yeah.
there no conversation? And so I love that I can see it that way so that I don't get caught up in blaming and shaming and only just angry that nobody showed up for me.
Mhm.
I also sometimes say it wouldn't have mattered if they had given birth to Mary and Jesus. They wouldn't have known how to nurture them either. They just didn't know. And
That's
so
true.
we personalize everything as a child.
That's
And
true.
I think this is how the soul sets up the curriculum for our lifetime, is that
Mm.
we personalize whatever's happening, and then it becomes our core challenge that we use the lifetime to face, nurture, and resolve. And so now that I have clearer answers, I can look back with 2020 vision, but at
Mhm.
the time, I definitely had no sense of how do I connect to my inner self, who I
Yeah.
actually am. And even when I had talent and all of a sudden I was getting attention,
Right.
the attention didn't all of a sudden fill me up and give me a great sense of self. In some ways, it made me feel like the only thing anybody saw was my talent, and nobody really
Mm.
cared about me, Ron. And so
Right.
I had to learn how to connect to myself and claim myself, which is what we would be taught as children if people knew how. So
That's right.
I love teaching adults now so that they are now teaching their children how to
Mhm.
connect and value self and feel their feelings and share their feelings and work through the challenged feelings. And it's such a beautiful thing since I've been doing it for 25 years now. I've
Right.
gotten to watch children growing up in a much more conscious environment,
Mhm.
and it's profound the difference that it creates.
That's wonderful to hear that you went from doing the work to now helping other people do their work, and
Yep.
that's the beautiful thing, right? It makes
Yeah.
a better society. So when we picked this topic, nurturing the self, when I thought about the word nurturing, the first thing that came to mind was parenting, and you just mentioned a little bit about that.
Mhm.
Parenting came to mind, and so I think that word is very much associated with parenting.
Mhm.
Um, so as a parent myself, I have three little kids, beautiful kids,
Mm.
um, and with me having a background from a trauma past, right? And I'm consistently thinking about how I am wanting to nurture my kids. Like you said,
Mhm.
being cautious about what I'm telling them and how I'm allowing
Mhm.
them to be right within our home. And but what does it means though, like to you? What does it means to nurture the adult self?
Well, if we tie it together to parenting
Mm-hmm.
or my own childhood,
Yes.
nurturing was not even in the vocabulary. And it doesn't mean that they didn't have an intention
Mm,
to provide, because just survival level, provide food on the table and clothes and a house and all of these things that many people in the world can't count on.
that's
And
true.
that was the end of the story. As long as they provided
Mm,
that structure, but that's survival needs. Those are not direct nurturing needs. So as I have gone through my journey and
mm-hmm.
put together the pieces and paid attention to so many different stories from different people, different cultures, races, religions from all over the world, we all share
Mm-hmm.
the exact same 9 nurturing needs. These are experiential needs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say those words now. We need to feel safe, connected. We need affection. And
Mm-hmm.
those start out as physical needs, but they're
Okay.
nurturing needs. But then eventually we add the emotional, and we need acknowledgement, acceptance, and compassion for somebody to say, when you're little, I'm not going to
Mm,
do it to you as an adult today, but when
right.
we're little, we needed someone to say, Faith, I can see that you feel sad. And you'd be like, oh, that's what I feel. Oh. And then you learn how to recognize it in yourself. And if they look at you with acceptance,
Mhm.
acknowledgement, and encouragement, then you continue to feel safe, connected, and affectionate in an emotional way. So, what starts out as just physical eventually adds the emotional. And
Mhm.
then we need mental guidance where we have encouragement, support, and clear guidance, or we could just call it clarity. If
Mhm.
somebody said, Faith, let me teach you how to evaluate choices. Let me teach you how to feel safe to share yourself. Let me teach you how to negotiate healthy relationships, balanced. Let me teach on and on and on.
Mhm.
Every life skill needed to be guided. Well, out of these nine nurturing needs, none of them, except physically safe. I was physically safe, but the rest, they didn't know how to connect. They didn't know
Mm.
how to acknowledge my feelings because they grew up with no one ever teaching them. So
Mm.
the great news, it's never too late to introduce these nine nurturing needs. So most of the time we set up the core challenges in childhood, and then
Mhm.
adulthood is where we seek the help, like what we're doing, where
Yeah.
we go and seek out tools, approaches, and finding out how to fill in the missing gaps.
Mhm.
So I love that at the end of one session with
Mm.
every single client, I say at the end, so in our hour together today, did you feel safe, connected, an affectionate environment, acknowledged, accepted, compassion, on and on through the nine? And they're like, yes, 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 yes. And I say, if in 1 hour we can create that kind of safe environment, imagine doing it consistently as an adult so that your nervous system learns to trust the experience.
Mhm.
Because you see, it's what we experience that we learn to trust the most. So when I was a little kid, I trusted I can't count on anyone. Nobody's really
Mm.
there for me. I don't
Mhm.
really deserve. I was trusting what my experience taught me. No one ever said
Yes.
those words to me. No one ever
Right.
said, "Ron, you don't deserve." It was
Mm.
my experience.
That's
But when I got
interesting.
it's so good because we
Yeah.
don't ever really talk about feelings and experience.
Not
And
much.
it's a huge it may be the main core piece of that holds trauma
Mhm.
and anxiety in place. And
Yes.
when we learn how, which is what I model in the work that I do with people, and I
Mhm.
see and hear and value who you are. I don't need
Right.
you to be at a certain point. I don't need to wait until you progress from a very wounded place, whoever I'm talking to, until you get over here. No, we're lovable
Mm-mm.
all the time.
Mm.
We're just as lovable in first grade as we are
Right.
in fifth grade or 10th grade. But if nobody knows how to create those experiences, we don't learn to trust it.
That's so true. I mean, everything you said, I can really I can align with because when you said like speaking of how our environment, it's part of how it's part of what shapes us, like the thing that we experience, our experiences what shaped us. Speaking of that, so when I was when I was a little girl, right? Um, young enough, growing up in Africa, and I had a father, similar to your story in a way, who was an alcoholic. Now, the environment that I actually lived in and the society that I was grew up in, it wasn't ideal, right? Because there was a lot of trauma associated with just. I mean, I grew up in the middle of war, so that's alone is a big trauma, and so to now also put that on top with the abusive father who is an alcoholic, right? And so there was a lot of different neglect. Of course, I felt abandoned. I felt all these different abuse, right? But the way, and so with what you said, the reason why I say I can relate to that is because I believe to this day, even though I'm still in the healing process from all those years ago, right? And the way I saw other people around me, and even the people that were supposed to nurture me, right, keep me safe, and all those and all those things, and the way I saw them nurture me is how I even decided to nurture myself, or thereof. So that's really true what you said, because if you don't know that, nobody's teaching you any of those nice, like, no, nice skills that you said, like, about nurturing, like how to love, how to feel wanted, and all those things. That's all you're going to know, and that's all I knew for the longest time. I didn't appreciate the fact that I need to take care of myself before I take out care of other people, because I was already programmed and thought to put other people first, because I lived in an environment that was authoritarian, right? So their needs came before me, before myself, before my needs. So everything you're saying, I can relate to, and I hope you guys that are listening today, that you guys can take some things away, because I'm already taking a lot of from this conversation. So let's continue on. Um,
Do you mind
so
if I jump into that comment before we
yes,
go on?
definitely.
I love the honesty that you just shared, and we hide our wounding in fear and shame, and we don't talk about it,
Hmm.
and this makes us think we're alone, but if we're really honest, every single person I've ever met, and believe me, I've had a chance to sing with celebrities, dine with royalty. I even was on the stage with 2 Supreme Court justices in performances at the Kennedy
Hmm.
Center. I don't care who we're talking about, at what level of achievement or uh, being visible.
Hmm.
Every single person I've ever met carries a ton of wounded challenge. And so, first of all, thank you for sharing yours with me and trusting that, and with all the listeners who are out there. So,
Hmm.
number one, we're safe to share
Yes.
it if we find people who are conscious, and we have to be discerning about that. If we find people who
Mhm.
are safe and we ease ourselves in, it's so important that we own the humanity of it. But now I also want to say that, if I can remember why I wanted to jump in, so give me 2 seconds to see if I can bring it back up. Nurturing self.
Yes.
If we had had the healthiest parents on the planet,
Mhm.
and they gave us all of these 9 nurturing needs consistently, that is still not the end result.
Mm.
Eventually, we take, oh, I am valued by others. How
Mhm.
wonderful. But how do I feel about myself becomes the next question, no matter what the initial setup. It's not
Mm.
just because we're wounded that we need to value and nurture self. Mommy and daddy would have said, Faith, I see you. You're a sacred little girl. It's so beautiful. How do you feel about you? How do you feel about your day? How do you feel about what you did? I hope you're proud of yourself. Wow,
Mm.
Faith, I see that you might not be spending time acknowledging yourself,
Mm.
uh, being compassionate with yourself. I see you being impatient with yourself. I hope that you will work on that, so that, and we end up being taught how to prioritize self. I
Mm.
hate, it's a strong word. I
Mhm.
hate the word selfish, as if me focusing on my inner self is selfish.
Right.
Oh my gosh. I say to my clients all the time, I am the top priority in my own life, and I hope you are in your own life. But how
Right.
many people do you think have benefited from me filling my well, from me showing up and learning to value me? Then I have that greater sense of me to bring to
Right.
all my connections. Whereas before, when I was trying to prove my worth, I was playing the role of caretaker, and I was a
Mm.
martyred caretaker, just
Mhm.
like my mother. Oh, I'm supposed to be selfless and just focus on that's modeling martyrdom. This is
Mm.
not healthy. Whereas if mom and dad say, of course, I value who I am. And of course, I make choices that allow me to
Mhm.
continue to build being proud of who I am. And that allows me to be so much more whole and capable of loving you, my children, my friends, my colleagues, my
Mhm.
partner. So that's some thoughts about why it's so important that we learn to nurture self, even as an adult, catching up from what
Yes.
we didn't learn.
Yeah, we have a lot to catch up on, that's for sure. A
Yes.
lot of us in
Yes.
society. So
Hmm.
how did you go from, learning to like relying on other people, right, to get to be able to trust other people with with your self-love, with, you know, like everything you just said, like how did you go
Hmm.
from trust how did you learn to trust your value uh and as an individual basically? Is that
Yeah.
something you had to learn over time, like to say, you know
I
what, I
think
trust
every
myself?
Yeah, I think everything is learned.
Mm.
Nobody just pops out of the womb knowing how to do diddly. And
Yes,
so it's all learned. We have to
that's
learn how
right.
to tie our shoe. We have to learn how to communicate. Every single thing is learned. And so we
Exactly.
learned some wounded perceptions as children.
Hmm.
And now I introduce what I call adult reality. And
Mm.
so if we don't learn how to challenge the limits that we grew up in, we
Hmm.
can end up programmed in our own nervous system by the early decisions we made, such as me saying, I'm on my own, I can't count on anyone, and, I have to figure it all out myself.
Right.
So I started out there, and most people end up embracing the child's decisions.
Hmm.
And then we grow up into adult bodies, but we're still carrying a child's set of decisions. So when I work with people, I get them to look at the fact that they haven't really lived in adult reality. So can
Mm.
I do a quick exercise in
Let's
this
do it.
moment for
Let's
all
do it.
the listeners?
Let's do it.
So everyone listening, just imagine for a second that there are 10 little innocent 3-year-olds in the room with you. Boys, girls, it doesn't matter what combination, but you've never met any of them.
Hmm.
See them in your imagination and now tune into the adult that you are. And you tell me if you could pick out one of those little innocent 3-year-olds who does not deserve to be loved, nurtured, and guided in their lifetime.
Mm.
Every adult I have ever asked goes, oh, clearly innocent 3-year-olds deserve to be loved, nurtured,
Right.
and guided. And I go, that's an adult truth. It's just clear to you, correct?
Right. Right.
And so now there are 11 little innocent 3-year-olds in the group, and you've never met the new one till this
Hmm.
moment, but it's you as a 3-year-old. So see the 3-year-old as someone you've never met, and it's you.
Hmm.
You tell me if you could magically go, oh, clearly that's the one who doesn't deserve to be loved, nurtured, and guided in their lifetime. And it's like,
Mm.
oh my gosh,
Makes
I've
sense.
never seen myself this way. And so the first step is recognizing that little innocent self is still in there and needs
Mm.
us to show up as the adult who can provide what mommy and daddy didn't know how. There's one more part to this exercise.
Hmm.
Now, one of these little 3-year-olds falls down, scrapes their elbow. It's never
Hmm.
happened before. They're in pain. There's even a tiny bit of red stuff that comes to the surface. They don't know what it is. They're confused. They are scared. They are wounded, and there are no adults around. But
Mm.
then they see you, the adult that you are right now in this moment. If one of those little 3-year-olds came running over to you Can you imagine that you'd go, "Get the hell away from me, I don't wanna deal with that crap."
Hmm.
I've never had anyone say, "Yes, of course, I would run the other way." No, and I get you to imagine in this moment, what would you do to nurture this child physically and emotionally if they're scared and confused and need reassurance? They're 3, they don't understand the logic of words very much, they
No.
feel you instead. And so what would you do? Most people say I would hug the child, I would put him in my lap, I would take care of the boo-boo, I would reassure them they're okay, I would take care of the and I go, "Oh, you're telling me that there's an adult nurturer that easily accessible when you do this exercise?"
Right.
Yes. Now pay attention to the fact that in your lower body, in the
Mhm.
lower torso, is where you hold the memory of your child self. And there has been a little 3-year-old wounded, scared, confused by your war zone, my family with no communication. All of that is still held in there. And we've been suppressing, avoiding, distracting, not aware that there's a child that we're saying, "Get the hell away from me. I don't want to deal with that." Because inside, we've thought we are still the same wounded, unworthy being. And it's simply not true if we
Mm.
start to get in touch with adult reality. That is the
Mm.
starting point that can change everything about how we begin to treat self.
Love that. That's so on point. I mean, excuse me. That's so on point. When you say we have to acknowledge, that acknowledgement piece is so, so important. I feel like in everything in life, really, it stems from that acknowledgement, like not really saying I don't it doesn't exist, like just saying yes, I know it's there. And then like you said, like for me, for the longest time I told myself, oh, therapy is not for me. And I think that was the narrative that I've been told growing up in well, growing up in Africa. We've never heard the term therapy. It wasn't something that's part of
Yes.
our dialogue or our conversations. So coming to America at 14 years old, and now transitioning into not having a family dynamic, living on an orphanage home, but then going into like a natural family through adoption, I was
Mhm.
very confused. I'm like,
Mm.
what is all this? Like, what do you mean family? Like, I'm supposed to be like this person, like you said, that voice and that person, that little girl is still speaking in my head, right? Saying, well, you don't deserve to be in the family. Like, you deserve to be a person who is independent. Like, you've been independent since you were 7 or whatever. Like, all of those things. And it honestly, it was something that I had to really fight over, to get myself to be like, you know what? I need to really look at this from another viewpoint. Like you said,
Yes.
I used to be like,
Yes.
I told my husband and I said, man, I feel like I've been a little kid this whole time. Like,
Mm.
well, I'm 32, right? I'm like, I feel like I've been wearing, just to kind of use your analogy also, like I've been having this like like this mask,
Mask
or
is
like,
correct.
yeah,
Yes.
and just like viewing the world from not an adult perspective, but from like the 7-year-old girl that was abused. I have been using this lens and just viewing the world through that 7-year-old. It's like I haven't been an adult at all.
It's
So I
amazing.
definitely, it does make a lot of sense when you acknowledge that
Yes.
this is something that
Yes.
needs to be fixed. Yeah.
I used to say to my clients, because I was in New York City, one of the
Mhm.
biggest, busiest places in the world, and I
Mhm.
used to say, "You can shoot a rocket down Broadway at
Mhm.
rush hour. Good luck at hitting an emotional adult."
Hmm.
Because none of us have been taught how.
Yes. That's
And
true.
so people don't understand how much they have been ruled by the wounded initial
Mhm.
limitations and then the compensating behaviors that we create out of it and the roles that we think we have to play, whether it's the super achiever or the caretaker or the black sheep in the family who just doesn't need anything. we literally get so caught up that we miss out on the fact that these are just specific soul challenges
Right.
and that every bit of it can be resolved. Every bit of it. So far, thousands of people have proved that is true.
That's so true. I think, man, everything that you've been saying, I feel like this is for me. I'm I'm like I'm relating to a lot of it, but I think a lot of times we just forget that, like you said, we are all human beings and we're just
Yep,
doing the best we can. But at the end of the day, we
yep,
have a lot of work to still do, and we
yeah,
just got to be willing to do the work. So, um,
yes,
just with everything you said so far, I would like to transition a little bit more. Um,
yes, please.
into how you I know you've done an excellent job with like learning everything you've learned, but then also like putting those things on paper because
Mhm.
it's such a lot. I think I haven't really published a book, but I'm in the
Mm,
process of um, writing a book, and I know there's so much that goes into that process. And I know you just
yeah,
wrote a new book, so I want you to talk a little bit about your book.
mhm.
Bright Lights, Big Empty, and A Journey of Profound Awakening. So just talk a little bit more. There it is. There's the book. Awesome. All right, yeah, just go ahead and take it away. Talk about the book, and how was the process like for you, and what do you want
Well,
the readers to take away from this book?
so the title, Bright Lights, Big Empty, is where I started.
Mm,
Oh, I'm feeling empty on the inside, but I'm going to go and seek the bright lights and achieve and prove myself and go out there. And I got a chance to do that. And I was
mhm,
still aware of the emptiness on the inside because we are so much more than just our achievements. That's the expression of self. But the inner self is what really determines the quality of our experience day by day by day. So the subtitle is A Journey of Profound Awakening into Self.
mhm,
And so I basically wrote this book to introduce myself into the world, but to demonstrate the path or the journey from wounded child to empowered adult, even into the awakening of some of the greatness of soul
mhm.
consciousness. Now, if that's too fancy, it doesn't matter. You can let that part go. But I want
Sorry
people to
about that.
know that no problem. It's the celebration of the soul.
Yes.
I I want people to know that we're all sacred beings on soul journeys, and on that spiritual level, we are perfect and whole. We're just learning specific lessons along the way. So this book is me sharing myself so fully,
Mm,
and it's not about me, it's about the journey. Because
right.
it's the journey that every single person is taking from fear and shame and self-doubt
Mhm,
into I demonstrate a very clear path into building self-value and self-awareness and even self-celebration. And
right.
so I literally go from child to adult into some soul stuff as well. And so that's why I put it to paper, because I want to reach as many people as possible with this very nurturing approach to life and to self,
Mhm,
because it makes such a huge difference. As I said before, every single person on the planet seeks
mhm,
these 9 levels of experiential nurturing in every stage of life,
right.
whether we were supposed to get it from mommy daddy or whether we're then supposed to sustain it by how we treat ourselves and the kind of relationships we create as adults. So, anyway, that's a little bit about why I decided to write this book.
That's awesome. I think there will be so much to take away from everybody. I think everybody should be able to just read the book because there's so much insights. You just give us a little bit today.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have so much live experience over the span of life that it'd be probably a long time to just sit here and talk about all those different teachings and wisdoms. But the book is there for that reason, to be able to, like you said, not only introduce you, but to really have, like, go through the journey of your life story and how you
Yes.
overcame, and now how you're actually using your skill set, your coaching and all the different life experience to uplift and amplify more voices.
Big
And
time. Big
that's
time.
exactly
It's
what
such a
we
beautiful thing.
yeah, it is. And that's what we really do, like to stand behind people like you who are doing everything they can to lift voices, right? And
Yes.
so I wanted to kind of just say real quick, um, there are so many different root cause that we talk a lot about it, different things that will make a person not have the ability to, you know, connect to the soul, to connect to self, right? And to nurture that relationship with self. And we talked about abuse, we talk about self neglect, and just all
Mhm.
these different things. Now I want to kind of give some solution. I know you did already some, but just maybe a couple of
Mhm.
solutions that you can
Yeah.
leave with our listener. How can we nurture powerful connections to self?
So, first of all, it's so important to allow ourselves to need help and support. As you said when you were in Africa and no one talked about therapy, well, guess what? I grew up in North Carolina and no one talked about therapy. And so it has become a new thing over the
Hmm.
last 10 to 20 years where it's becoming, you know what? I'm not gaining a thing by hiding the fact that I need some guidance. If I want to become a doctor, you think I can become a doctor by not seeking guidance and training? If I want to become a great communicator, you think I don't need guidance and support? Every learned skill needs guidance, support, and
That's
encouragement.
right.
And
Yep.
so that's the first thing, is to be aware that I don't care whether somebody projected their fear and shame on you and said, "Oh, that's just weak." No, the comment that it's weak is that person's
Hmm.
fear. I'm
Mm,
scared, and so I'm gonna make it wrong. It's outside of
right.
my comfort zone, so I'm gonna invalidate it. And then we end up keeping each other scared to death,
Mm,
rather than there are people who've dedicated their lives to every skill we would want to learn in life. And so if I want to be a car mechanic, I'm gonna seek out the best car mechanic I can find to teach me how to do it.
that's right.
And so that's the first step, is to be aware and willing and be open. So now when I work with people,
Hmm.
there are some very specific tools that help someone connect to self, the inner self. I
Hmm.
went to school for 20 years. I got 3 degrees beyond high school. Not one course ever talked about the inner self. No training, no encouragement. It's just almost an ignored subject, and I think it needs to be the centerpiece of our lives. So I have to help people get in touch with the inner self. And the first thing I do is show someone how typically disconnected we have been
Mm,
from the self, even our physical self.
right.
So I'm going to do another exercise if that's all right with you.
That's right.
So I'd like every person listening at this moment to do a quick inventory. I'm going to say one word. And when I say the word, don't change a thing about what you're already doing, but shift your focus to that word. The word is breath. Don't change it, just notice it.
Mm,
I have been teaching for so dang long to so many people. I already know the great likelihood that every person discovers they're doing a tiny, shallow breath that's just into the upper chest. And this is what I call survival breathing, just enough to survive. As opposed to when we're a baby, you have 3.
mhm,
When we're a baby and we're lying on our back in the crib, only one thing moves: the belly. It
Mm-hmm.
goes up and down, and then we go through all the trauma and we become disconnected from a full body natural breath. So now, if you discovered you're breathing shallowly, I want to encourage for you to take what you consider to be a proactive breath in the nose and out the mouth. And I'm going to be quiet for a few seconds. In the nose, out the mouth, proactive. Almost every person discovers, even when I'm encouraged to take a big breath, I'm very careful, particularly on the out breath. So most people, and I'm going to do it in the microphone. So in case someone's not watching this, because I don't know if it's video or just audio, but I'm going to do it in the microphone so you can hear the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Most people breathe in and they want to breathe full. And so they fill up their chest rather than that lower belly. And then on the out breath, it's usually like as if they're blowing air out of a straw in a very
Mm,
careful way.
right.
And that's about it. Now, this is what
Mm,
I encourage for the exercise: breathing in, filling the lower belly so that we all look 6 months pregnant for the exercise, not all day, every day, just
right.
for this exercise of building the scope. And so we breathe in, filling the lower belly, and then the out breath is like this. Most people have never breathed like that one time in their life.
Mm,
So if you're listening, do it with me. We're going to breathe in twice and breathe out twice. Together we breathe. Filling up and now out. Open, relaxed mouth and jaw. Breathe in again. Yay,
mm,
Faith. Can you hear that power in the breath?
it
And
helps.
now ask yourself an adult reality question. Is
Mm-hmm.
there any threat to having stretched into a bigger breath? Did any ship sink in the harbor because you decided to connect and move more energy? Was
Mm-mm.
anybody hurt or diminished because you decided to show up for you in a much bigger way? Breathe like this 3 times a day for 1 minute. Even once a day for 1 minute will be brilliant, but do it 3 times a day. Why do I suggest 3 times? It's not the magic number of how much we should breathe every day. It gives you a starting point to see if you're
Mm-hmm.
even willing to remember to nurture yourself for 3 minutes a day.
Mm.
I've already worked with thousands of people. I know that most people say, "Yeah, I did it for a couple of days and then it kind of just I forgot." Because we're not used to proactively, consistently showing up for self and nurturing self. This is just a foundational piece that you'd
Mm.
use to gain access to your body, and you learn to release tension so that
Mm-hmm.
you can discover much, 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 much more. So there's a starting place for you, Faith.
Well, that's a really awesome, fantastic starting place, starting point, really. Breathing is something that, I normally don't think about often because I'm just like you said, and I just gotta go. I'm trying to survive life, my kids, everybody. So survive myself. So it's like you're right, like that little exercise you just showed. And thank you, by the way, for doing that because that really just
Mm,
bring a lot more value to this interview.
yes.
um just knowing how to breathe is such a big thing and I don't do it enough, so thank you.
Imagine you're just sitting at a red light. You sit there for a solid minute,
Yeah.
breathe while you're sitting there going, I just wish the light would be green and I'm so tired of, and you're in your head fighting.
Yeah.
Instead, breathe for the dang minute. Breathe. Nurture
Right.
yourself.
I love
Do
that.
it when you wake up. Do it before you go to bed, and you will sleep so much better, releasing some tension in the body or from the body.
That's really awesome. Well,
Yay.
there you guys have it. There's those are some really great, basic things that does not cost money. It's free.
Mm-mm.
We already have
Mhm.
the ability. It's just we got to utilize that tool,
Yeah.
which is really something that I'm going to be trying as well. So I hope you guys took some of those points and are willing to try that breathing
Yes.
techniques, that Ron just freely give to us, so we can be able to become better people for ourselves, and then
Yes.
also, and then it would just, once we become better for ourselves, it has to affect the society we live in, because that's just how life works.
There's one more thing I can offer, even for completely free. Um, Go to my website, which is my name, ronbaker.net,
Hmm.
not com. You'll get cars.net. So ronbaker.net, and you will see right there on the homepage where you can get 2 free guided meditations that will teach you how to connect even more fully to the inner self as a starting place.
Mm,
So hopefully
awesome.
that will give people something to look forward to.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. That's a great place to go and get something like that you can actually have
Mhm.
tangible with you.
Yeah.
um so just to kind of wrap up here, at our show, we started this new thing that it's basically where we call it the last three. So the last three questions of our interview, where we
Mm.
ask, and the goal is to have you, do your best and answer, basically whatever comes to mind, right?
Yep,
Putting on the
yep,
spot.
yep, yep.
So the first question I like to ask you, Ron, how did you find and connect to your own voice?
Spending time going inward, balanced
Mm,
with all that outer focus that I was doing. Slowed down, learned how to focus
mhm.
inside.
Wonderful. It all comes back to the
Mm.
self. That's what I'm
Mhm.
hearing here. Awesome. So second question is, what are you most proud of right now in this movement?
Mm. I am proud of writing this book, number 1, and
Mm-hmm.
sharing myself, but I am also proud that over time, I have learned how to love and nurture beyond being ruled by fear. I have
Mm,
nurtured all of my fears so much that I am willing to show up and just love whatever is there before me, and I'm really proud of that.
that's beautiful. And then lastly, the third question,
Mm,
what's one life lesson you've learned along your journey of life, and how would you define? I mean, yeah, basically how what is it that I would say there's more, you have learned a lot of things in life, but maybe pick
mm,
maybe two things that have
yeah,
been a lesson for
I
you.
can just pick one.
Okay.
Um, so much more is in our hands to make a difference for self first and then the people around us. So much more is in our hands if we're willing to get the help to learn how to build self value, self connection,
Mm,
self awareness. It is literally, we don't have to wait on another person. We don't have to
mhm.
wait on an unconscious parent to wake up and figure it out. We don't need permission. We can choose. And then every choice we make can become an a building of who is the man or the woman that I choose to be in the world. I get to build that choice by choice by choice. So that's the biggest life lesson I would point out.
I love that. Such great insight and expertise. Thank you so much for sharing with us today, and just being
Mm,
so vulnerable with your own story as well, and trusting this platform with your story, and allowing yourself to lift your own voice, and also connect to that voice and your stories.
mm,
So, just really quick, how I know you've already shared your website. Are you on social
mhm.
media, like, outside of the book? How can they reach out to you?
I am. The best way is my website,
Yes.
ronbaker.net, but I'm also on Instagram at I am
Awesome.
Ron Baker. Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and on
Cool.
Facebook as well, so yeah.
Everywhere, right? We have to be
Yeah,
these days.
yeah, just to create connections, which I adore.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really awesome. And then there's so much value you can actually get from being able to follow. I always tell people be careful with the people you're following and the people that you are bringing into your
mhm,
circle because social
yeah,
media, as we know, is part of our association. So, awesome. Well, and then you guys can also get the book at his website. Like he said, it's ronbaker.net. You can also
yep,
get the book on Amazon. It's actually on there as bestseller, so you can find that as well. And
yeah.
again, what is the name of the book? The title?
Bright lights, big empty. And I was so excited then that in its first week, it became an Amazon bestseller because it's not about validating me. It's validating the fact that there are so many people hungry for a clear path to feeling better and having more fulfilling experiences. And
That's
so I
right.
love being able to encourage all those people.
That's wonderful. And then if you actually have the book or you already got the book and you've already, on his website and you've seen all the great things and insight and you've been able to learn from him, you can also listen to his podcast. He's a fellow podcaster as well. So I just wanted to
Mhm.
mention that because we have to support each other. So he
Yeah.
um he has a website, he has a podcast. And what is the name of the podcast also?
Empowered at last.
Love that. Awesome. So if you feel like you need to get empowerment, like we all do, definitely listen to Ron's podcast and you'll be very much empowered. Well, thank you guys all for tuning in today and just being part of the conversation here. I lift our voices. We are very much setting on this mission and the movement to, help people connect, first find a voice and be able to connect to the voice through the stories because stories is one of the best way we can be authentic and be able to connect and relate to other human experiences. So thank you all for joining us today, and remember to keep lifting voices and also try to find your own voice as well, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.